Welcome to Emerging Franchise Brands, the podcast that introduces you to the visionary founders of America's fastest growing franchise opportunities. We'll also hear from industry pros as they share insights on what it really takes to achieve the elusive milestone of 100 plus locations. I am your host, Frank Fumi, founder of I9 Sports, and my 20-year journey from inception to acquisition has given me a unique perspective on how to succeed in franchising. Join me as we welcome today's guest. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. On today's show, I have the founder of Little Medical School, Dr. Mary Mason. Mary, how are you today?
I'm doing great.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show. Little Medical School, this sounds like a phenomenal concept. So why don't you tell us what's the origin of it? What made you want to launch something like this?
You know, Little Medical School is really a concept based on my childhood and growing up. My mother was a pediatrician. She was one of those few women back in the 1950s in medical school. Wow. So me and my siblings, we always grew up being told, not that you can be anything you want to be. You can go to any medical school you want. You can be any type of doctor you want to be. I mean, it was kind of a joke,
right.
But she loved medicine. She was, so proud to be in the profession. And anytime I had friends over or cousins, whoever she could, get a hold of, she would just, start talking, you should go to medical school. It's such a great career. So she would bring home fun activities for us to do from her office. So I had my own little doctor's office in the playroom. I had Band-Aids. I had, the whole set, to do vital signs. I had eye charts. And so it was so empowering though, because you really could, see that, you can do, you can be anything that you want to be.
Right.
And I wanted to capture that and share that with kids around the world.
Wow. That's amazing. So your specialty was internal medicine, right?
Yes.
And how long did you practice before you started wanting to launch this?
Right. So I also always loved business. And, I got very involved in student government and American Medical Association when I was a medical student. And so I actually went and got my MBA at the end of residency. And so I did have practice. I would do part-time practice, and then I would be part-time in the business world. And so I was doing that for years. But in the meantime, I was running little birthday parties. And, anytime people would call me and say, can you do a little doctor program? I'm like, I would love to. And I really love program creation. And I think there's, education for kids has to be real. Mm-hmm. It can't just be read this book. That's where I feel that we capture that power of role play. You put a white coat on a child, you give them a stethoscope, you give them a name tag saying Dr. Susie, or Dr. Joey, and it changes the dynamics. The kids embrace it. Right. And instead of going, this is stupid, this is silly, they really, they become this physician in training, and they actually see that, this is something I can do. Math and science, I can do it. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we're trying to bring with the brand.
That's so inspirational because you grew up in that sort of environment, but most people don't. So you really took the best of your childhood, and now we're able to spread that to other kids to see if maybe they have an interest. And
I remember being in first grade, and some substitute teacher was going around asking, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, a doctor. And she just said, that's really hard. You're going to be in school till you're, almost 30. That's a really hard path.
Oh my goodness. Really inspirational.
She didn't know who my mother was. And my mom was down at calling, like, who's telling you that? Who's telling the kids this? But I do see that happen a lot because, the other great thing about our brand is not only are we targeting kids between the ages of 4 and 14, we do high school. We do high school as well, but I really like that age group,
Yeah.
because I think you can really make a difference.
Mm.
But we also can bring in what we call junior instructors. So I take high school students, but I use tons of college students and to be instructors.
Mm-hmm.
But what that does for them is that, if you can teach it, it's going to make you so much better when you're practicing it. So we're really able to have this whole, spectrum and gamut of children and young adults that we're really, shaping into becoming the future healthcare professionals of tomorrow.
Sure. You're making something possible that a lot of kids maybe don't think was in the cards for them, or, they're not given encouragement by their parents. And
Yeah.
you're opening their eyes to the possibilities.
It amazes me, the stereotypes. Because I actually talk to a lot of pre-meds, and parents will call me and say, hey, can you talk to my kid? They think they want to, they're thinking they might want to go to medical school.
Mm-hmm.
And especially women, I hear it all the time, I won't have a life. I won't be able to have a family if I go into medicine. And it's like, that is so not true.
Mm.
And they almost try to talk themselves out of it. Oh, I'm not smart enough. It's like, of course you are. And so that's where, we really tell kids, and it's, and honestly, people always ask me, well, how many doctors do you think you've actually gotten out of this program in the last, 20, 4 years? And I would say this is that I don't honestly, if they actually do become physicians, that's fantastic. If they become nurses, veterinarians, dental assistants, any of that, that is fantastic. But if they go into some other career and they did it because they found out during our programming they were good at something, that they were something
Yes.
they didn't realize, that's the success here. And, I remember when I was a kid back in the, 70s, you're in eighth grade, you're filling out your little form, what you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, we get second and third graders who will tell us, I'm not good at math. And it's like, who
Oh,
told you that? It's like,
right.
you're good at math. And so, like in pharmacy school, we have them doing dosing of pills and, figuring out doses for patients. And all
Right.
of a sudden it's like, hey, you just did math. And they kind of look at you and they said, I did. Or the funny one that I see a lot is that STEM is such a big buzzword. It's
Oh,
so
yes.
big in education, but STEM has really become, in certain ways, coding,
Mm-hmm.
robotics, and the physics and engineering. And some kids just don't like that. But you put them in a little veterinarian class and you show them, biology, and you show them how to take care of a pet and to diagnose a pet, or I should say a cat or a dog or a
Right.
horse. All of a sudden they're like, that's science. It's like, of course, this biology is science. And
Right.
so it's very important. And this is something when we go into schools and do our after school programs and
Mm-hmm.
our summer camps and special programs, we tell them you have to have a well-rounded STEM program and offerings, because if you just do robotics and coding with the kids, you're going to lose a lot of kids. And
Absolutely.
you don't want kids in fourth and fifth grade saying, I'm not good at STEM and science.
Sure. I kind of feel like the secret to little medical school is that kids don't even realize that they're learning, that they're
Yes.
enjoying what they're doing. And like you said, even if they don't become a doctor, if they learn about their own bodies, that's success.
Yeah.
Or the fact that you're giving them confidence. What you and I have, we have a lot in common, I think, when it comes to child-related businesses, is that I was in the sports business. I never
Yeah.
expected the kids to play in my sports program to be professional athletes. Same thing as
Yeah.
with you. You're not expecting them to become physicians. But
Right.
if we're giving them confidence to be able to take on
Mhm.
challenges in life and find their passion, that's success in itself.
It is. And you are so right though too about, learning about health and
Mm-hmm.
learning about how to be a good, accountable patient. And we just have to look back a couple of years to COVID
Right.
and all the lessons we learned there. It was, and not only was it the importance, of taking responsibility for your own health and for, vaccinate, whether you needed to get a vaccination or not, or whether you, had to wash your hands and social distance. But it uncovered all the workforce development issues we have in healthcare.
Yes.
And that's the other, area that I get very excited about is that, our program is universal. So we can go into these top performing schools, with kids who are, learning all this great science, and our program works because they're learning something different than what they're learning in health and science. But we can also go to underperforming, struggling schools, and we get the same type of reception from the kids. It's exciting. It's people love to dress up, and I find even in middle school, middle school's tough.
Sure.
Those they're a tough
It is
audience.
rough. Oh, yeah.
But if you put a white coat on those kids and give them a stethoscope and show them how to use it and start showing them how to we do casting, we do first aid, we do all sorts of emergency medicine, wilderness medicine. And I got to tell you, that one has been really funny for me because, when we develop, we have probably about 1,000 hours of programming. We have, just all these great programs that we pull out. But wilderness medicine was funny because I wanted to make sure that, when kids were, out in the wild, which I find out a lot of kids don't go camping. A lot of kids, don't know what to do if they have an emergency in the wilderness. And, when we would do the focus group with kids, we'd be like, okay, you and a friend are walking, taking a hike, your friend falls in a ditch, can't get up. What do you do? Everyone raises their hand and says, call my mom or dad on my cell phone. And it's like, okay, your cell phone doesn't work. And they just look at you.
What do you mean my cell phone doesn't work? That's the big tragedy here.
Right. No, but it's like you don't have any cell service.
Right.
What do you do? And so that's the other thing that has been kind of fascinating along this whole journey as we introduce this is that, kids have lost a lot of the life skills that we had growing up because their parents or an adult or somebody they trust is a phone call away with their cell phone. So they don't always know how to think through emergencies. And that is such an important skill. So that's another area that, we do a lot with, like hyperthermia. We have the nice little, we have in hypothermia, we have those nice little emergency blankets. We show them how to use them. We show them how to filter water so they don't get sick. I mean, we do all sorts of really fun activities, but are critical. And it could be life-saving for them. Wow. And that's, that I think is what's also incredibly valuable about our franchise. It's not just the kids got to, play for an hour, but I really feel they're learning things that are going to help them for the rest of their life.
Sure. In my world, we used to call it age-appropriate programming, right? Because you're certainly not going to teach kids that are 4 years old the same way or the same content as a 14-year-old, I assume.
Right. Well, and what's funny though, and the beauty of what our program, the way it was created is that I always brought educators. I would hire the best grade school, middle school educators I could find who knew how to write creative curriculum.
Okay.
And I paired them with healthcare professionals. So we created very unique programming that is age appropriate, but really challenges kids. So I can get a 6-year-old to tell you the whole track of the digestive system because we do the digestion as an assembly line, and they all, so they will sit there. And what we do is, at the end of our programming, we always do a big graduation where they come in and we, have the kids, you throw them questions and, we have them answer them for their parents and the adults that come. And it's amazing. The parents are like, I can't believe you taught my kid this. This is fantastic. But if you do it in a fun way and we just have a lot of really creative ways we teach, but we also have a lot of items we've developed that were not available anywhere else. So, for example, with our sports medicine, talking about sports
Sweet.
here, we teach the kids about Tommy John surgery. And
wow,
we actually
really? That's awesome.
Absolutely. They know about it. I mean, kids know, that baseball player had that such shoulder surgery. So we have a lacing board where that we're showing them how it works. And you can teach kids this, but it's fun. And so I don't shy away from, teaching things to kids that, oh, that shouldn't be taught till, medical school or what. You can break things down and make it simple so kids understand it.
So it's the method at which you teach that concept, not so much.
It's the fun way you teach it.
Yeah.
So like taking digestion, one kid's the mouth, one kid's the esophagus, one's stomach, small intestine, large intestine, and then we call it the end. But we're showing them, like, for example, when the large intestine, they're throwing a sponge into the digestion bucket because you're absorbing all the fluid in the large intestine, and that's what it does. And so you can show them simple ways
Right.
of what the functions are of different organs and how they work together, and kids love that.
Oh, I
and
bet.
and they love big words, so we always have three little medical school words of the day that some big fun words. Astomosis, we come up with all sorts of fun things that they can say, and
that their
and
parents don't know.
and you tell them to go home and use them at dinner, and but it's fun because they love that. But it's that way of, not only do they feel like they've achieved something, the parents feel like they're actually getting value.
Sure.
And that's really important. Because we want kids to be excited and have fun in our classes, with and learn.
Mario, is the programming such that it's like a 10-week program or 6 weeks, or how do the sessions work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's whatever the customer wants. It's modular. So we do, the cornerstone, where I really started was after school. So after school, usually 1 to 1.5 hours, 6 times, over, a month and a half. So you would have, a program like that, or it'd be a 12-week program. So then you had to have, we would have them in, arranged in certain programs that you can do. But then we also have it where if you do a summer camp, we have 25 hours of programming that can go over an entire week, along with a lot of what we call study breaks, because kids you can't throw things at them constantly. You have to have fun as well. So those study breaks are those lighter things that they can do to break up these blocks of learning. So that was, then you have a summer camp. Now we also do like a birthday party. I know that is gross, where the kids make mucus and snot. They love that. We have, is there a surgeon in the house? We have, the veterinarian birthday parties. They love all those. Are like, those hour programs. And so what we do is we have all this programming the franchisees can access that we constantly are creating, but we're also making sure it's up to date, because that's incredibly important for me, that it's, it is correct. And it's, so you can actually use those in different ways. We also do intergenerational programs where you go into an assisted living and you got a grandparent with a grandchild doing an hour class together. We have done parents' night out. We do the Boy Scouts and are now Scout badges, and then the Girl Scout badges. We even had our own patch program with some of the Girl Scout councils, where we would do a morning program and they'd get a patch to put on the back of their vest saying Little Medical School. So there's this, for basically, you can pull this programming in many different ways. You can actually do it as an in-school class, which we've done as well with some districts. And even during the pandemic, even though I didn't like it, we were doing Zoom. So we could actually do these, with materials the kids had around their house. But we also, the programs that we have that we run in schools and in community centers and wherever kids are, it's a very rich program, because I can tell you, being a mother of 3, kids love to bring stuff home. They love to get stuff. So we always try to have something that the kids bring home from the class. And, and really the way this almost works is as they do different classes and courses, they kind of collect things where they have their own doctor's office. Like I kind of had my own doctor's office when I was a kid in my playroom. So, but it's kind of fun for it makes it fun. And it's, and even with the veterinarian, I've had some kids do some of our classes, the same ones, like 3 and 4 times because they like the dogs so much and they want a bunch of dogs. And I'm like, okay, but the other great thing about the programming is you can jump in at any time. So it's not like you have to do part one to do part two.
Oh, that's
So
great.
yeah, so we try to make it so it's when they're coming in, there's they can come in at any time. And then we've also been able to break it down where we have classes for younger kids,
Hmm.
that, 4 to 6, I call them those pre-readers. We have programming really aimed at 5 to 10-year-olds. And then for those older kids, more that what we call that extreme med school,
Hmm.
medical school for teens. And so that's different programming as well.
And is all the programming done strictly at the schools and after school?
It can be
Or it could be,
done yeah, it can be done anywhere. We base the franchise region off how many schools
hmm.
are in that area and those associated zip codes. But you can do this program anywhere. You can do it with any group. It's really, but schools are an easy they're an easy place to go
Hmm.
because so many schools now, especially, not only the private schools that often have very sophisticated before and after school programming, but public schools as well have that need. And then we also do like camps when kids are on spring, the schools on spring break or winter break. We do camps for the parents, so that the kids, the parents still have to work, so the kids have somewhere to go.
Sure, but there's no brick and mortar franchise location.
There, you know what? We have a couple who do. You can. In fact, we have a retired physician down in Mississippi, and his wife was a teacher, and they wanted to use his office. He had a great office with a conference room, and he was starting to wind down from practice, so they run classes there.
Oh, wow.
Several of our international have brick and mortar. I had a brick and mortar for several years. And honestly, I've now just moved it we do run classes at our corporate headquarters. We have a really great space because I use it a lot for testing for focus groups. So, when we're trying new programming, but we run programs up there as well. So you can, the problem with brick and mortar, it is hard. That means a parent has to pick them up at school and
Sure.
get them to another place. So we found it was almost easier just to be able to just go to the kids. And
Hmm.
that's the other thing we have done is that the supplies, we have a great warehouse. Dave Albers runs our warehouse. He's amazing. And everything is pre-packed. So class one, everything for 12 kids in a bag. And so when we will ship directly to the instructor just pulls that out. And then they have supplies that are kind of those supplies that are those we use in a lot of different classes that use over and over again. And it's in their bag, so they can just carry it in their bag, and they are, ready to go. And so, because that's the other thing I found when I was running this myself before I formed the official little medical school, I was spending so much time running around getting supplies, and it was expensive.
Hmm.
This way I can buy 10, 20, 50,000 items at a time and then share those cost savings with the franchisees when we put together these kits.
Oh, that's smart. And just makes the learning curve for the franchisee, it makes it so much easier.
Oh, it does. And like I said, we have, we really try to get supplies that are really beautiful, that are branded, that they look great.
Hmm.
And that's important for, we want things that really reflect the brand positively.
Sweet. So, just for the audience, just some of the numbers I want to share. So, you founded the company in 1999, I understand. You have 48 franchise locations in 14 states, plus the three
Mhm.
company owned locations in Denver, Orlando, right? And South Illinois.
Yes. Yeah.
And, but you franchised in 2015. So, you had been doing this like 16 years, or at least from the time you founded the concept. It was 16 years until you franchised. What was the defining moment for you, Mary, that franchising
Yeah.
even entered your mind? You decided we're doing this. We're going to franchise this concept.
Well, it was really funny because I actually wrote this with the original Little Medical School when I was finishing up my MBA in 1999 as a class project. And it was just fun. And, I thought it was a great way that do some volunteering while I was, when my kids were, little. And so I just really was playing around with it. And I really spent probably the first, from 2000 to about 2010, just writing fun things. Like people would call me and say, "Hey, there's an asthma camp for these kids with
Mm-hmm.
asthma. Do you have anything?" And I'm like, "Oh, that would be fun if we did this." And so I would just come up with fun things to do. And then I was sitting with the CEO of one of the large physician groups in town at a holiday party. We were at a table and we're just chit chatting, and I, was just telling them, I have this concept little medical school, and this is what I do. And I had a little logo that, with the schoolhouse and the stethoscope that I had someone draw out for me, and I showed it to him, and he just looks at it and he's like, "I've never seen anything like this before." And I'm like,
Right.
"Okay." And so we actually, it's like, why don't we partner together? And they were actually very into pediatric orthopedics. So they did a lot of community outreach with kids. And so, we just, we got in a room and we got a list of all the schools in the St. Louis area. And there's like four of us, and we just start calling. And all of a sudden we had like 50 schools that said yes. And we were like,
Oh,
"What?" And it's like,
oh my.
I don't even have a summer camp, and they want this, this school wants a summer camp. And so there was this very quick, just we've got programming, we can do this. And then my COO, my long-term COO, Jennifer Grifford, who's been with me for 2012. We honestly had a little supply box, or like a supply closet, where we had all these little boxes. And back then, like we would just have this huge box that we would
Mm-hmm.
give to the instructors to carry in. And I remember I was carrying one of those into my oldest daughter's grade school, and she looks at me and she goes, "Oh my God." She goes, "Please do not tell anybody this is your program. This is so embarrassing," because you have this huge box. And she's changed her mind now. So she's in public relations now. So she now realizes, the potential there. But
Oh yeah.
but that's now where that's where we had to learn. It's like, you can't ship a big bucket, that we need for our programs
Mm-hmm.
across the country. That's expensive, and it's not good to have an instructor carrying that in. So
Sure.
now we have these beautiful collapsible buckets that are branded, so an instructor can just slip it into their bag. And Jen was the genius behind that, of really figuring out, how do you make this portable, because
Mm-hmm.
that really is the key. You have to be able to go to the kids.
Right.
So then we spent those next 4 or 5 years to really trying to figure out, how do you make this program work. And then I start getting calls from people in Texas and in Florida saying, "Hey, my kid was in St. Louis visiting relatives. They went to this little medical school camp. We want to know when are you running any in our area?"
Is that not the
And I
most
was
amazing feeling?
It was, well, and it was funny because I guess, and I didn't realize this, but say a lot of families come to St. Louis for vacation, and there's a lot of great things in this
Sure.
town, but we had a lot of kids out of state enrolling in our St. Louis programs, and it just made
Wow.
such an impact. I was really surprised, and so that's when I kind of sat back and it's like, okay, how do you expand this? How do you there has to be people in the community and communities across the country
Mm-hmm.
who like to teach kids. They want to have a positive impact. They don't have to be a medical person, because that's the other thing. We've set this up that a college student can teach this.
Mm.
And that's really important. We have great teacher guides. As long as you have a good grasp of high school science, you can teach this. That's when we went with the franchising. And I found a gentleman, Dave Waldman, the franchise maker in San Diego,
Okay.
had a long conversation with him. And he said, "I think we should do this." He goes, "I think this will work." So he was fantastic. He spent hours with me making sure that I understood that franchise disclosure document backwards and forwards.
Good for
Because he
you.
said that is critical. And no, that
Absolutely.
was, and I remember at the time thinking, I mean, it seemed like a lot of time that was devoted to this,
Mhm.
but I am so grateful that Dave made me sit down and do it, because it does, you have to, if you're going to be a franchisor, you have to understand that agreement. And what I also find is that a lot of times franchisees come in and they don't always understand what it means to be a franchisee. So people come in and say, well, I don't like the way this logo looks. I want to change it this way for my, and it's like, no, this is it. And I'll say, originally I went to, when we first launched, I was really thinking doctors would be a really good target, because there's a lot of physicians who want to get out of medicine, which is, it just, there are a lot of people saying
Sure.
I'm ready to change careers.
Yeah.
And so I went to this conference, and we had probably 10 people saying, we want to buy this right now. This is what we want. And so the one thing though that's hard is that you have to, and then this is the other lesson I've learned, is that when you sell franchisees, and when you award franchises, you really have to make sure that people understand the commitment and understand that it can't just be an hour or two on the weekends. It really, you have to hire people to run it for you if you are going to continue to do your practice, or
Mhm.
your full-time job. So we've learned a lot along the way, but we have some fantastic franchisees who really do a great job of getting this just everywhere in their regions. And it's really designed so we really want the franchisees to focus on making the sales, making the contracts, and getting this to as many kids.
Mhm.
And then it's really turnkey. So you just get the instructors to the classrooms or to the kids wherever they are, and everything is there for them to be able to run this.
Who's your ideal franchise owner then?
Yeah, that's a great question. I know you mentioned you're in pharmaceuticals.
I was
I
back in the
think,
90s. Yes.
well, yes, but you know what? I think people who are former pharmaceutical reps are fantastic, because they understand medicine,
Hmm.
they understand sales, and they understand how to put together a program and present it. I have some fantastic teachers who really are business minded and are very good at running the program and using their network. Also I've had several small business owners, one in IT, who wanted his kids to be pre-med and go to med school, and actually bought the franchise for that, because he wanted his kids to work it.
Okay.
But he's been great. He's our first franchisee, still with us in San Francisco. Just renewed him, and he has done a really good job out there. So it's funny, and it's not to go after doctors, because people say doctors are not, the whole average, doctors are not good business people. But I do think it's, while you would think a doctor or nurse might be the best,
Hmm.
I have had some very, very good ones,
Hmm.
but I do think it's sometimes having somebody who's on the outskirts of medicine,
Yes.
but understands business and how to you're really putting on a party, is the way I look at it. You got
Right.
to get the people there, you got to get the instructor, you got to get the supplies, and then everything's there then for them to run it.
Yeah. I see a lot of similarities between your business and my past too, because in my past experience with sports, finding people, I thought originally that the best franchisees were going to be the ones that love sports and knew something about it. And it turns
Yeah,
out they were not the best franchise owners
yeah,
because they knew something about sports. So they already had like a lot of preconceived notions on what they thought the actual operation of the business should be. And it turns out the people that had business acumen and the people that had great
yeah,
interpersonal skills and can get into the community and all those things was far more important than whether they knew the rules of the game. And I would imagine the same thing. I can see a
yeah,
physician who might be a brilliant physician, but could get caught up in the
Yeah.
teaching of little medical school. And well, Mary, I
Yes.
want to do it this way, or I think because they know too
Yes.
much. And that's the blessing and curse of your business and my business was.
Well, and it's funny, even from the instructor side, I get a lot of retired physicians who call me and say, "Hey, can I teach? I'd be love to teach." And that I love when people volunteer. It's great,
Sure.
but kids have the thing you also have to remember about after school programs and summer programs and holiday programs is the kids have been sitting around all day in school, or it's summer and they want to have fun and they have a lot of energy. And so you get some retired physician up there and who's maybe doesn't know how to entertain kids while they're teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And we spend a lot of time with our instructors really showing them, doing the trope, how do you really do this to control a classroom? And a lot of times the retired physicians are like, this is not what I expected. And it's like, well, it's like in sometimes I laugh, but even though we use a lot of pre-med students in colleges, instructors,
Mm-hmm.
some of my best instructors are drama students. So it's a very, you're right. You sometimes have to sit back and say, okay, this is what I thought it was going to be, but
Mm-hmm.
boy, I was wrong, And so, but I do think it is a great franchise for people who, really want to make a positive impact in their community. I have to say, I loved, this day, I still love to teach. I love to go in and, give out the diplomas or run the kids through different, activities that we have. And, just to see those, just those beaming faces of,
Mm-hmm.
like, especially when we give them their, we do the little medical school oath based off after the Hippocratic Oath, and we give them their diploma, and, and they take pictures with the other kids in their class. They sign each other's diplomas. Often the principal or the superintendent or, the head of the Boys and Girls Club or whoever is there will come in,
Right.
and it's fantastic. It's just a great opportunity. And I've also had several corporations and businesses come in
Mm-hmm.
and ask if they can be a part of this and sponsor the cost for the kids.
Wow.
Which is another, great way to do that. And, we've, another group that I've done for years is American College of Surgeons. I'll go to the clinical congress that they have every year, the big international meeting for surgeons, and the kids of the surgeons who come to the meeting, while their parents are off at their medical lectures, we're doing little medical school with them, and they love that, and they just, I mean, it's just really, like I said, it's just such a rewarding. It's something that you can be proud of, and just really very rewarding, business.
Totally. Mary, what's the investment range to open a location?
So that right now the franchise fee is 35,000 with a 15,000 curriculum fee.
Okay. And how big is the territory?
So, and I can't hold me to this, but what we do, it's a number, I believe it's 100 schools, and then the corresponding zip codes. So it gives a really good size, but keep in mind, it's not just schools. You can do hospitals, you can do community centers,
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere kids go, Boys and Girls Clubs, any type of, church run programs, so there's really so many places. Hotels are actually an interesting one.
Really?
Well, to go in and do a parents, like a Saturday night kids, parents night out, kids night out.
Okay.
And because all you need is a conference room. That's all you need. And so you can go in and run that. And, that is, trust me, I've been there many times where you just want to go out, you're in a town, you don't know anyone, and your only option is a babysitter for 4 hours and the kids eating out of the mini bar. So, so I think there's just a lot of opportunities. Conferences are another big one.
Okay.
Where you can go. So many conferences now are looking, kids come with their parents, especially during the summer. So conferences are looking for places for a child, for child entertainment as well.
Okay, sweet. Mary, I'm thinking you've been franchising now for almost 10 years now.
Yeah.
and you've got 48 locations. You're in 14 states. What's your long-term vision for the company?
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's we're still kind of in that COVID recovery mode, quite honestly, because I can tell you if COVID hadn't happened, I think those numbers would be much, much higher, and they were. I have to say, I think we have a winning recipe right now. I think we've got great programming. There's so many areas in the country I would love to get into.
Hmm.
And it's just trying to find the right franchisee to do it. That's really what we're hoping to do, is do a lot of domestic expansion. Also, we get a lot of interest internationally. In fact, I just had a couple countries just this week that called us, people very interested in doing a
Hmm.
master in their country.
I
I also
bet.
tell you, Canada's done really well. So Canada is, yeah, we've been really happy with the experience there. So those are also things that we're going to continue to do.
Okay. I'm going back to what you said about trying to find the right franchisee. That's always the challenge, right? It's making
Yeah.
sure that we partner up with the right franchise owner. We talked about who the ideal franchise owner is, but I haven't heard yet is I'd love to know if you think about all of your franchisees and who's the most successful and who has challenges. What would you say are maybe some of the most common traits of your most successful franchisees?
Yeah, that is a great question. I would say that one, they have to really think of this like a business. One of the biggest mistakes I see people make is they buy a franchise and they're like, I'm going to run this myself until I start to get some revenue, then I'll hire somebody. And that is such a mistake. You
Agree.
have to be, your time as the owner is so valuable. Hire somebody for $15 an hour. I mean, there's so many people today you can find that, especially with, because you can do this remote as
Hmm.
well if you need to,
Okay.
who's going to make those calls. Well, I should say, if you have somebody, because you need someone to make the calls to really start setting up all your accounts, all the outreach with all the different children,
Hmm.
educational opportunities out there, schools and beyond. So that I think is very important, really being able to run it like a business. And you have to spend money to make money. So
Absolutely.
although I will say on the advertising piece,
Hmm.
there's such a word of mouth on this. And it's amazing. Like you go to one, you find a parent and say, hey, we're at this great school down the street. We'd love to be in your school. And the parent will be like, oh my gosh, why aren't you in our school? And then it's like they'll introduce you to the after school coordinator. So there's a
Right.
lot of competition that works, but also we get a lot of free press, newspaper, but TV,
Hmm.
because everybody likes seeing kids, you know, dressed up and doing it's
Yeah.
a great feel good story. So we've had a lot of success in big cities getting into newspapers and TV. The other thing is it's really has to be, and like I said, you can't fake passion. And so I
Agree.
want people who really, I need people who really believe in the mission and really want to give back to the community. And giving back doesn't mean you can't make money. And but it
Right.
is, you're doing a very valuable service. Because I think the other thing that has happened in American education, whether it's right or wrong, there's, you have, certain school, when you have struggling schools, you have so much being poured in from grants and all these special programs. And then you have, the private schools that can afford to bring in, this type of, outstanding educational opportunities for the kids. But often the all the schools in the middle get
Hmm.
lost. What you're able to do with this program is to bring this, this great educational opportunity for kids, and you can bring it to all the schools in your area as a franchisee. And, it's kind of like that apple pie in baseball. Oh, we don't want a program that teaches kids about, being a doctor or nurse or, a veterinarian. We don't want that. We don't want them to learn about, good health practices and how to be a good patient. So it's kind of like when you go in, I mean, it's an easy
It
sell.
is an easy
And
sell.
I'm not a good salesman, but I mean, you really have to believe in the product.
Absolutely.
And the other thing too that I think is great about our program, and I've been, we still are the only children's franchise out there that has exclusively health programming that's in depth.
Why is that?
That is a great question. And, for years I was worried to death that it's like someone's going to come in and copy this when I'm small.
Sure.
And actually, one of my great advisors has been Maxine Clark from Build-A-Bear.
Okay,
who's
yeah.
also here in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Maxine's fantastic.
I was like, wait a minute, I know that name. Okay, I remember her book.
No, she's fantastic. And, and she always told me they can't duplicate this because this is your story. They can't do it. And so she's like, stop worrying about that. And so,
by the way, that's a great lesson for fellow emerging founders that are listening to this, that fear that somebody's going to copy this, because people can steal your idea, but they cannot steal your culture. They cannot steal what you do. They cannot steal why you do what you do.
Well, and it was funny because there was one franchise and it was funny. It's like, why buy a little medical school when you can buy our curriculum? I mean, we saw it.
Really?
I called the person. It's like, you can't well, it was more of a conglomerate, this whole thing of all these different STEM programming. But, the thing is with our programming is there's so many layers to it that, we always have something to offer and we always have new things. So, and it's a great area to be in. And so, even if I have somebody else running, some of the engineering after school programs or robotic after school programs, then that says to me, it's not even competition. It just signals to me that school is interested in STEM.
Right.
And my story to them is you call them up and you say, look, if you don't, you need to expose kids to biology and medicine as well, because you don't want to, you want to make sure they have a full picture. And it's great because all of our programs are STEM.org accredited. Okay. And the gentleman, who is the CEO, he's actually a neurobiologist by training. And I remember when we first talked, he said, I'm just so happy to see programming in the biological sciences for kids. What has happened is that we have so much programming, it would be hard for someone to catch up at this point.
Yeah.
And I think we have so much copyrighted, innovative teaching aids that we have developed with teachers and with healthcare professionals, which you don't see happen. And that's the other thing. So I think we've really gotten to a point that we just have this very unique offering that is very sustainable.
Sure. Well, if nothing else, the market has given you an incredibly long runway of time to be on your own. Since you've been so mindful about who you bring on as a franchise owner, Mary, I'd love to hear any advice, or when you're having a conversation with a potential franchise owner, the due diligence or the questions that you ask them when they're carefully thinking about joining. What would you say to that?
Well, I want to make sure that they enjoy working with kids. And I think that, that's key, but also, are they comfortable with the train the trainer model? Because when you buy a franchise, not only are you responsible for setting up the programs and, calling the different venues to get them set up.
Sure.
But you also have to find the instructors, and then you have to make sure the instructors are following the curriculum, because that's the biggest danger, is that if you get somebody who goes rogue and decides to use the equipment in ways that they're not supposed to, that can be a problem. So we have to make sure that they are able to they have to be good managers, or they have to be able to hire somebody who's a good manager. And that's what we really want to understand, is that, and then we also, it's not a part-time business. It's not a 2-3 hour a week business. And that's the other thing. I think sometimes people think franchises, even though they're turnkey, they
Right.
think, well, why am I not doing well if I only, I spent, Friday afternoon each week working on this.
No.
So that's the thing. See, that's what you have to understand. And I don't mind if people, people will come in and have other commitments, and I get it, but then you better hire somebody who can run it for you.
Phenomenal advice. I agree with you. That is the makings of a great franchise, when you're willing to, or you're making sure that they make a commitment to that. If you're not going to do it, somebody else has to.
Yeah. And I think it is the same for any franchise.
I agree. Yeah.
But I do think there's a lot of myths out there that, oh, buy a franchise, you're making money in your sleep by doing nothing.
Right.
And there are a lot of people who do think that.
That's
and
true.
and we, you have to really kind of sort through that when you talk with people. The other thing that we get a lot of questions about, well, when's the best time to do this? When, and it's like, look, this is a year-round offering. You can come in at summer camps, you can come in at fall, you can come in at spring. Right. There's always the need for this programming. So, and then the other thing too, I think sometimes people get too hung up on their territory. They're like, well, I have to have this territory, or they come into and saying, well, I only want schools in this demographic, and because those are the only ones that I'm going to make money on, which is not true at all. Mm-hmm. And so, and that's the other thing that I try to tell people, is that there's opportunities for these programs everywhere. So don't, so I do get people saying, well, if I can't have this, I can't do it. And so it's really trying to, really show them that they can be successful, even if they can't get that one zip code that they want.
Right. 2 questions for you, Mary. If someone was interested in learning more about Little Medical School, how can they get more info?
Yeah, if they go to our website at littlemedicalschool.com, we have all the franchisee information and the contact information. So we would love for people to, look through our website, and they're interested, we'd love to talk with them.
Great. Awesome. Well, I finish every podcast with the franchise tip jar, because the community in franchising is so generous with sharing of information. So is there maybe a piece of advice that you would give an entrepreneur that is interested in franchising their concept before they jump in? What would you tell them to do?
Believe in yourself, and don't let people talk you out of it. Because I think that it's so easy for people to say, oh, that sounds so hard. Oh, I don't, you just have to go for it. And the other thing I would say is, sometimes you think your idea is just too simple, that, oh my gosh, how, somebody, I don't know if this will work. Simple is key, because it's that simple concept that you can test in your market, and then you can replicate for others through franchising. Those are the best.
That is awesome advice. Yes, complexity is the enemy of execution, as they say.
It is. And, we all, I have to say that in certain ways, that probably was some of the hardest lessons I learned early on, was I had way too many supplies, and, I had to figure out, how do you simplify this so you can get it in a bag and carry it in the classroom. Sweet. And so at 20 years on, I think we finally have figured it out.
I think you have. Well, Mary, thank you so much for being on the show. I appreciate it. It was great meeting you, and I wish you continued success.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the Emerging Franchise Brands podcast. For additional insights, guest applications, and to stay connected, visit us at efbpodcast.com. The Emerging Franchise Brands podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and the views expressed do not necessarily represent those of Emerging Franchise Brands, its host Frank Fiume, or Emerging Franchise Group, LLC. Any discussed franchise or investment opportunity requires thorough investigation, obtaining proper disclosure documents, and expert consultation before making any investment decisions. The podcast and its host do not offer professional advice or endorsements, and they hold no responsibility for actions, representations, accuracy, or consequential damages related to the podcast content.